speaker series that we are looking for a team or individuals to help us to co-design. And at the end of this, we're going to have a question and answer period. And we also will create space for you who are participating to be able to have some conversation and networking if that is something that you all are interested in. We noticed from our last information session that moving to a virtual model has decreased the ability for people to network in person, and that's sometimes one of the benefits of these information sessions. So we'll create that space at the end. We'll turn off the recording. So we are, looks like we have more people joining us, which is great. I am going to ask Whitney to go ahead and move us to the next slide. So before we get started, I'm going to just acknowledge that we are here today. I'm assuming that many of us are here in Seattle and in King County on the ancestral land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people. We honor the land itself, the Duwamish tribe who shares their lands with us, and all the Native people who call King County home. Next slide. So we are going to be starting with a welcome. So I'm just going to introduce our COO team. So if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, other staff members, and introduce your name, your pronouns, and the role you're playing on our team and the role you'll play today. Go ahead, Christina.
Hi everyone, Cristina Gonzalez, she, her pronouns, program manager with Communities of Opportunity, and I will be supporting today with the chat and supporting the Q&A session. Thanks for joining us.
And good afternoon, everyone. Whitney Johnson. I'm supporting the technology today. So if you have any troubles, feel free to let me know in the chat box.
And we have two other King County staff members who I'm going to invite to introduce yourselves and the role that you're playing with our information session and with our contracting process.
Hi, my name is Linda McKinley, and I am the buyer that was listed for this, our request for applications. And I just kind of wanted to quickly cover a couple of things about your submittal for this RFP. The submittals are due on October 6th, and I just really want to stress that as you're preparing your proposal, that you be very, very mindful of that date and time. The time is 2:00 p.m. Pacific time. We have had, since we have moved to online submittals, we've had several solicitations, and we've had to actually reject submittals because they were received after that deadline. So as you are preparing your proposal, please be mindful of the date and time. I also wanted to say that you know, we are here today, and you've got the experts from the agency here today to answer your questions. If after today you still have questions regarding this RFP, I ask that you not contact any of these people, but that you contact myself or Vicky Nakamichi, who is listed on the RFP as the alternate buyer. And we ask that you do that just to keep everything so that we don't have any appearance of someone getting information that someone else might not have received. So I just ask that you do that. I want to also remind you that as a government agency, we are subject to public disclosure laws, and so that anything that you put in your application will be subject to public disclosure. If you have information in your submittal that you consider to be confidential or a business secret or anything like that, highlight it on the RFP and just put confidential or put some kind of a note so that it stands out to us. And what that means is that if someone requested to see that information, that does not mean we would not show it to them, but we would contact you and let you take whatever steps you would need to in order to protect your business interests. I also want to call your attention to one other part of the RF of this solicitation, and that is in section 2.2. This is being advertised through the small contractors and King County Contracting Opportunities Program, which means that we offer an incentive for for King County certified small contractors and suppliers. They will receive an extra 10 points if they provide us with their certification number on the front page of the solicitation document. We've also provided a sample contract with the procurement, and I just ask that you review that contract so that you are familiar with King County terms and conditions. After today, as I said, if you have questions about this solicitation, please only contact Victoria Nakamichi or myself. And the other point, and then I will turn this back over to the agency, I want to say I really suggest that you go into our procurement website and get yourself registered as an online holder for this solicitation. And what that means is that if you are an online holder and I have to issue an addendum or provide additional information, you are automatically notified that some additional information has been added to the RFP. And that's all. With that, I will turn it back over to the agency. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for those tips, Linda. It's really helpful. Chris, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yes, my name is Chris Diabro. I am the Best Starts for Kids and work with communities of opportunity contract specialist. So I support them with solicitation and contracting matters. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So we are going to then go and cover a couple of meeting tips. We're going to do just a brief overview about communities of opportunity and our COO learning community, and then we'll go into some detail about the RFA, including some of the items that Linda has shared with us. And we'll then
This is Linda.
question and answer period.
Hi, Linda. This is Hodan.
Okay. Let's see. Next slide, please. Great, thanks. So technology tips. If you can go ahead and in the chat, introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, and organization. That helps us to also build our list of groups that we continue to send information to around other opportunities. You can be added to our newsletter, so you can add your email address, and just also to get a sense of who's in the room or who's on the virtual Zoom today. And then if you have your phone or headset muted, I actually think that Whitney has muted everybody. So you may need to, when we get to the question and answer period, ask to be unmuted, or I think Whitney is going to go ahead and unmute everybody. And then if you would like to have closed captions, there is the opportunity to enable those by clicking the closed caption link at the bottom of your screen. Next slide. Great. So Communities of Opportunity is an initiative between King County and the Seattle Foundation, and we're a community-driven initiative in our design, but also in the ways that we fund our programming. We fund ideas that are driven by community and the solutions that they see in order to build greater equity so that all people can thrive regardless of race or place. Next. We look at 4 different results in King County. We look at thriving economically, having quality, affordable housing, that people are connected to community and have agency within their communities, and that they are healthy. Next, we do this in 3 ways. We have 3 strategies. So our 2 funding strategies are the institutional policy and system change, and that work is held through the Seattle Foundation. And so we work on community-driven policy and system change work. We currently are funding, I wanna say 17 groups. We've increased some of our funding to address COVID-related policy and system change. And we're going to be continuing that work with some new funding. So stay connected to Communities of Opportunity for new policy and system change funding. We also have our place-based and cultural communities. And our place-based and cultural communities are 9 diverse communities throughout King County. You can actually see on our website, and Whitney, if you want to put our website in the chat, you can see which of those communities we're funding. And those groups work in deep partnership to be able to address the policy system and environment in the communities that they're living and working in. The learning community is our final strategy where we are addressing how we can build stronger networks in our communities. So looking at critical connections, how we're learning and reflecting together to actually build new innovations, take the knowledge that our communities have and really harness it and deepen it. And then capacity building of individuals, organizations, and partnerships, and really to explore models that are going to help us to gain greater equity. So we do this work through many different ways. Actually, I'm going to go to the next slide. I think we kind of covered this. Thanks. So some of what we've been doing for our capacity building since COVID is responding to the need to move to virtual engagements. And so we created a series of trainings and resources for our CO partnerships. We also have been doing some coaching and strategizing with our CO organizations around how do we really move forward and work when things are so uncertain and our priorities have been changing so rapidly. And we've also done work around conflict transformation with a series of workshops last winter. Next. So this speaker series is connected to the work that I've been sharing about, and it's that opportunity to really be able to bring on an individual or a team to work with our COO staff and our stakeholders. So stakeholders might include our governance group, it might include other partners in philanthropy or in the public sector, as well as our community partnerships that are funded, and also unfunded groups that are working around racial justice and policy and system change work. And so we want to create an opportunity to highlight our partners' work, to create a platform in which we can share the successes, the challenges, the learnings, the highlights of our partners' work. We've been working with partners since 2014, and there's a lot that we've learned, and we really want to be able to share this and think of COO as a movement in which we're looking at how can we get other funders, other public sector employees, other organizations to be working together using a shared lens of community-driven investment, policy system change, and racial equity. So this speaker series, we have identified what some of the themes might be. And I'll be totally honest, these themes were identified prior to COVID and prior to what we're seeing around the uprising around racial injustice. And so we really want to be focused on what's relevant, what's current right now. So these are some focuses that were identified when we were designing and developing, but they may shift. And we really want this individual or team to sit with our COO staff and stakeholders to identify what are the relevant and most important themes that we want to uplift in this moment. So some of the details around this are that we have $75,000 available. This would include consultant fees and implementation costs. If you are applying and you don't necessarily have the capacity to hold all of the implementation expenses, we have what we call our learning community administrator, and that is a consultant group, Cascadia Consulting, and they help us with some of the logistics and event management. And so that organization could help if you are, say, paying a subcontractor or paying stipends and you don't have the capacity to do that. That work can be done through our learning community administrator. The contract term is a maximum of 14 months. We anticipate that this body of work and the contract will start in November. And we are really needing that all contracts are spent and ended by the end of December. But we are open to a project to being, any time within that 14 months. So you'll see that there's a curation of 6 to 9 engagements for the speaker series. So it could be that the actual speaker series ends earlier. So it's really up to the project design to identify the timeline, but the maximum for the contract is 14 months. So the deliverables that we would expect from this contract is a written summary of topics and themes and presenters, both from our COO funded partners, as well as research related to speakers that could be outside of our funded partners. Those could be local or they could be national, potentially international, with just within the connected theme. We also are going to be looking at co-design, and so the design would ideally have multiple options in which the stakeholder team would identify which one we would settle on and agree upon together. So a presentation of 2 to 3 designs of the branding, what the name is, the theme, and the potential speakers. The development of messaging and communications materials would also be held by this contractor, although we do have some of that support as well from our internal COO team and from our learning community administrator. The group would also, or the individual would identify the calendar of dates and hold the logistics and planning, the ultimate curation of the 6 to 9 engagements, and then at the end, a written compilation of the learnings and reflections and recommendations. Next slide. So these are all outlined in the RFP, so I won't go into all of them, but really these are some of the activities that we would expect from this contractor to do: some surveying from our COO staff and partners, research, developing the themes, selecting speakers, contracting and paying the speakers, although like I said, that can be done through our learning community administrator, developing a calendar, drafting communications materials, and then facilitating and convening the speaker series. Again, this it may be that the contractor does the facilitation. It could be that it's staff. It could be that it's other community members. But ultimately, really, the end result of the speaker series, the contractor is responsible for. And then capturing and synthesizing what our learnings were. Next. So there are some expectations that we hold with learning community consultants. So we really want to ensure that we're holding a value around our learning, and that that's culturally relevant, that it's creating anti-racist and equitable learning environments. And you'll see some questions in the application where you can address how you've created those types of learning environments. All of the work products are going to be part of King County and COO. So as a contractor, you will be sharing the work products with COO. They will not be your own. You will also participate in COO evaluation activities. And then we'll be working as a team. So I hold a team with the other learning community consultants. We come together just to share what are we doing, what are the things that we're working on, what are our strengths, how can we support each other, but also as a co-design, you'll be working with COO staff and other stakeholders. So eligibility, individuals, organizations, or teams are eligible to apply. That can be public, nonprofit, or private. And then if you are working as a team, we will only be issuing one contract. So you'll have to identify who will be the contract holder. So the submission requirements, these are outlined in the RFP. There is Exhibit A, which is the RFP cover sheet that is created through our procurement department. Please remember that you'll need to sign that. There's also the narrative questions. So there's 3 questions that we ask you to outline, and that includes what your project approach is, your project team, and relevant experience. And this is a maximum of 5 pages. If you feel that you have answered it in less than that, that's totally fine as well. But we just want to make sure that you have enough detail in your narrative so that the reviewers can score and understand what it is that you're bringing to the application and who's participating. We have a budget template for you to outline the budget expenses. This could be staff, but also within that $75,000, how much of this might go to compensation for speakers or I guess we're likely not going to have any of these in person. I think it's fair to say that the majority of this will all be virtual, I guess, depending on the timeline. And if you want to submit the opportunity that if we move into a later stage and we can gather in person again, you could potentially create event space in your budget template. And then a resume or CV of the project lead. In some of our other information sessions, we've had people ask, you're only asking for the project lead, what if we have a team? And so in that 5-page narrative, you can also explain the strengths and experiences of those team members. As Linda said, oh, go back one more, you'll see that you'll submit it to Linda or to procurement.submittals@kingcounty.gov. And again, no later than 2 p.m. So we really suggest that you try to submit that prior to that 2 p.m. deadline. If it's after that, there really is not anything that we can do. Okay, next, thank you. About our application evaluation. So the criteria is outlined in this RFP. You'll see the scoring and how we identify the scores that are awarded. They will be reviewed and evaluated by a committee of application evaluators, and this includes one staff member. It also includes some representation from some of our stakeholder groups. So funded partners, community partners that are not funded but share similar alignment, as well as a couple of individuals who work in philanthropy and also the public sector. The review team members all participate in the equity training. This is part of all of the BSK funding, that there's a equity training that helps us to address what might our biases be when we're thinking about this type of work and who's positioned well to lead this type of work, and helps us to live out our equity values when we're scoring these applications. So as Linda said, because these applications are going to be going through King County procurement, there are points for the SCS, I spell it out on the next one. I don't remember all the acronyms, but so that's 10 points, and you have to be certified by King County at the date and time of the proposal submittal. And if you have questions about that when we get to the question and answer period, I know Linda knows way more about that than I do. And then we may have an interview. So you'll see on the dates that we have an interview date. And if you would hold that time, our process is pretty quick. And so we don't give you a lot of notice if you're going to be invited for an interview. And this is if we're having, we have further questions or we're unable to make a decision just through the applications. So the SCS, the small contractors and suppliers. And here's where you can get more information. Whitney has actually added the slides so that you can download it. So if you want to click on that link directly, you can find out more about what it means to be a small contractor and supplier and how you would get that designation. So here is our timeline. There is a final day to ask questions, and that's because it's challenging when people are writing and things change or things get updated. You want to make sure that at a certain point, you're not going to keep getting new information, so you know your application is really speaking to the most relevant information. So we do ask that all questions are submitted prior to the 29th of the month. That final addendum, which you'll be able to then get the answers to all of the questions that get asked. So say somebody asks a question, Linda emails me, I respond to it. The question and the answer then are posted so everybody has access to that information. The RFA responses or RFP responses are due on Tuesday, October 6th, and then we're going to review and rate them the 8th through the 16th. And we'll schedule the interview, so you would hear from us by October 16th for an interview, and the interviews will take place on the 20th. We anticipate that we'll identify and notify you by Monday, October 26th, and an agreement start date by November 2nd. This is a really ambitious timeline, and if you've worked with King County, you know that there's some flexibility in these timelines, particularly around the agreement start date. As Linda said, read the contract requirements, become familiar with them. Particularly, there's an insurance requirement that we want to make sure that you're aware of. Yeah, just making sure that all those make sense to you, the terms and conditions. Again, if anything changes, the addendum will be issued. If you sign up on the site, like Linda had suggested, then you'll actually get an email to let you know. Keep going. And then this is just a reminder about what the full application package is. So again, Exhibit A, the narrative, the budget, the resume. You'll submit it via email in a PDF, and late submissions are not accepted. So if you have questions, we're going to open this up now for a question and answer period. So you can ask me or other team members direct questions. But if something comes up after this information session, you can email Linda, or she also identified the other buyer, Victoria. And Linda then works with staff to be able to get the answers. And then we update the addendum so everybody has access. After this is over, we will also be capturing all of the questions that are asked today, adding them to the addendum. We're also going to be uploading a recording of this video to our website. So if there's something that you want to go back to, you'll be able to do that. Okay, so that was all the kind of nuts and bolts, but want to invite you all to ask a question. So I believe at this point, Whitney is going to change the permissions, so you can take yourself off mute if you have a question or write it in the chat. And I'm just going to ask Christina, was there anything that I missed in the chat that has come up?
Nope, no questions yet. So encourage you to, if there is anybody that has a question that would like to just share out right now.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Can each of you that are on the call today just shoot me an email letting me know that you were on the call today so that I have a record of who was in attendance at this pre-proposal conference?
Okay, so we ask people to check in with their names and pronouns and organization. So if you have not got a chance to do that, or you sign in a little bit late, if you can please share that information with us in the chat, and then that way we have a list of everyone who is participating with us today.
And would you also like to email, would you also like us to email Linda in addition to?
If you add it in the chat, then we can go ahead and send that information over to Linda. Would that work for you, Linda?
Yes.
Great.
And I actually think when you guys had to sign in, you had to add an email. So Linda, we can share that with you as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Technology. Thank you all so much.
No, I'm like, I just want an old pen and paper.
Yeah, it's easier to do that. So thanks. So are there any questions that people have?
I see one in the chat. Can you provide a little more detail about the role of the Learning Community Administrator? Good question. So the Learning Community Administrator has been supporting some of our events. So the ways in which they provide support currently are they may set up an Eventbrite that would allow people to register. They would set up the Zoom. They can often play a role as like the tech person on the Zoom while a presentation is happening. They can help to problem solve technical challenges. Like if you're not sure how to execute the idea around like a Zoom breakout rooms, right? They might be able to provide some consulting around how we could create some engagement around this. If we're having a speaker series and you want to do breakout rooms. They also can provide direct payment. So if as a consulting organization, you only have the capacity to pay yourself, and in your budget, you've identified that you anticipate $30,000 worth of stipends to presenters. They would then be able to work with the individual who's the contractor for this body of work to identify what the scope of work is and what the agreement would be, and they would pay that stipend for the individual who's participating as a speaker. So they can pay out those expenses. they could also, you know, for example, you want to get another set of eyes on what are these called? Like you know, something that you're creating, like a poster or something, and you are having some challenges, and they have some graphic design. They could support as well. What we ask is that they don't play a direct role in actually doing the design, but they play a support role. So the design and the idea formation really starts with this contractor, and they are there to provide support.
Right. And
did whoever asked that question have any follow-up? If you have an additional question to follow up directly on that, feel free to unmute yourself.
And there are several questions in the chat. Patricia's asking, is there a mechanism which gives us confirmations of receipt of our proposals, and how many teams will we plan to interview?
Linda, can you answer that question? Is there any way that they get a receipt of the proposal or a confirmation that once it's been submitted?
Once the proposal has been submitted and received, you will be notified that it has been received, yes. You will get a confirmation.
Great, thank you. And how many teams do we plan to interview?
Yeah, that really depends. I think I can give some examples from some of our other learning community activities. So because these are really pretty specific roles, we don't get a lot of applications. We could maybe get 10 applications, and we would then anticipate maybe 3 interviews. If we have less than 10, maybe we would do 2 interviews. So it's likely that we would do at the most 3 to 4 interviews.
Thank you. Sarah's asking, since these are virtual, are you providing the virtual platform, or should that be part of our proposal?
Sure. So for example, the account that we're on right now is a shared Communities of Opportunity Zoom account, and we would make this available for all of the activities that we do through Learning Community. We have a couple of Zoom accounts that we use. If there's another platform though that you think is preferable, we would be able to build that infrastructure into the Learning Community, and so we wouldn't expect the contractor to hold that platform, and that would not necessarily need to be an expense that you would hold.
Tina is asking, how many organizations, agencies, individuals are a part of this learning community?
So the learning community is anybody really. So it depends. We're really thinking, especially for this speaker series, that we're going to go beyond our traditional funded partners that most of our activities have been targeted towards. So this is the opportunity where we can invite in our other philanthropic partners, our other public sector partners. Right now, a lot of learning community activities have been centered on our COO funded partners, which is also a really large number because we do so much partnership work. So I don't know how to answer that question in terms of numbers, but that this is the opportunity to really grow who's been engaged with our learning community. That's really one of the opportunities with this work.
All right, and C.HP is asking, can the proposal make an assumption of complete virtual delivery? Is it changed to in-person venue at the discretion of KCCOO at a later time?
Yeah, so I would say that I think we should probably plan it to be all virtual. We're really hoping that this would be through the end of 2021, and it's just hard to know the ways in which things are going, and I know how challenging it can be for planning. It could be that we would say maybe we would hold 1 or 2 in person to celebrate being in person maybe next fall, but I would say the majority of it should all be planned to be virtual. That is not what I would have said 6 months ago though, but things have shifted.
Yeah, I think it's safe just to do everything online or plan everything online for now. Yeah. Patricia is asking, are there any incumbents?
I don't know what you mean by an incumbent, like somebody who's already done it before? Yeah, no, we haven't done this before. This is new.
Great, thanks. Let's see here. Does COO King County use a standard rate for speakers, presenters?
That is a good question. Christina, what do you think to that answer?
We are, through BSK, we're working on developing a standard, but we totally recognize that are completely different spaces depending on experience. And we also recognize that consultants of color can historically like underpay themselves. And so we want to balance that. And so I think that the answer is not quite, but we're really looking at those variables to create something that's as equitable as possible.
Yeah, so I'm hearing one around a standard rate for consultants and then a standard rate for actual presenters or speakers. We definitely, through COO, want to compensate and value the knowledge of our community members and our community organizations. And as Christina said, don't want to underpay them. So for example, I think it would depend also on the role in which they're playing. So are they helping to co-design? That could be a larger stipend than if they are, not necessarily needing to prepare as much or be as involved and as engaged. Also, the things around the budget are going to be negotiable, and we'll do that in contract negotiations. So if we see that maybe there's a difference between what application is presenting for a stipend versus what we've done in our practice before, we'd come back and have a conversation about that.
Great. I got one last question in the chat, and definitely we still have time for more. Patricia's asking, will there be any involvement of community advisory teams? Will the consultants be responsible for delivery of marketing, save the dates, et cetera, using specific mail distribution lists?
Yeah, so involvement of community advisory teams. We have a couple of teams in COO. We have our governance group, which is the body that makes decisions around funding and strategy and oversight for communities of opportunity. And that includes folks from the public sector, from our funded place-based groups, as well as our philanthropic partners. And so I'm imagining that, yes, there will be a couple of them that will be part of this design. I've identified that Whitney, who's on the call today, will be part of the design as well. She's a staff member that works on our communications. And then likely we'll invite in a couple of our other community grantees to participate as well. And we may invite a couple of other participants or get some feedbacks from some of what we call our aligned funders, other funders that are working around policy and system change, racial equity, or some of the communities or places where we're funding. So yes, there will be involvement and there will be opportunities to work in co-design around what does this advisory group look like. The consultant, go ahead.
No, sorry, will you continue?
The consultants will be responsible for delivery of the marketing. We will work again as a co-design team. So we have a communications staff member, Whitney. We would utilize all of our COO platforms, the Best Starts for Kids, King County platforms. Cascadia, our learning community administrator, has also helped us with being able to distribute information. So no, it wouldn't just be held by the consultant. The consultant would be designing the save the dates, providing the materials, but they wouldn't be responsible for all of the dissemination.
Mm-hmm. But if you've got community contacts that are aligned with our work, we definitely want to build our community as well.
Yeah. If you have ideas about listservs or ways that we can reach other communities, you're involved in, other groups. Yes, we want to be able to bridge that as well and utilize the skills that this contractor is bringing.
Mm-hmm. I think we got all of the questions in the chat. Did we happen to miss one? Your question didn't get asked and answered. And if not, do y'all have any questions, additional ones? You can also just ask your question too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. This is Victoria, and I just wondering, you created a number of opportunities around the learning communities strategy. And so what would be success for you? What does success look like for this particular speaker series?
Yeah. You know, I think one success is really being able to highlight and share some of our partners' work and providing it in context of other similar work to be able to create a narrative within King County. So for example, looking at, you know, successful community-driven policy change. And some of our partners have really been doing amazing work. And how can we share that across to other stakeholders? Because a lot of our, I think the brilliance of our communities, we haven't done a great job of being able to really elevate it and uplift it. Our community groups are doing that on their own, and they've actually asked, like, how can you help us to be able to share this with other groups, including other funders, including other people working in the public sector who are determining strategies around funding or investment. I think also being able to connect new ideas. So some of our partners have some ideas as well around like where they're learning from. And so they may have ideas about who they want to learn from. Those are my kids. They're home now. I don't think they know that I'm on this call. So I may actually need to put my headset on, which means I have to turn my video off. So thanks for letting me see, letting you see my face, but I think it's probably better you hear my voice. So hold on just a second.
Thank you. Folks have other questions?
Okay.
So this is part of our reality now, right? So appreciate your patience, and I think this is part of the speaker series as well, right? Is trying to be real, that this is, you know, this is going to be our space, and we're going to have kids and, you know, other people around us, and so yeah,
Dogs.
yes, lots of pets, I'm sure. Yeah. Thank you. Are there any other questions that we can kind of queue up, or you're
Go
feeling?
ahead
I
and
have a
ask
question.
your questions while I try to figure out my headset.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
With your community partners, what success have they had in really being diverse? And I mean particularly people of color, and particularly African American, but people of color, period. What success have you had with these groups?
Success in terms
So,
of
well,
funding?
the makeup of what they
or-
look like right now,
Okay.
the makeup. Do you consider them representative of the populations for the county?
Yeah, and Whitney, you just did a quick kind of look at what our breakdown is. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So a majority of our funded partners are organizations that are led by people of color, communities of color, as sort of measured by our majority of staff and their board. Do they identify as people of color? We have, you know, significant numbers of funded partners that are Black-led organizations or Native, Indigenous led organizations as well. We do fund a majority of our groups in South King County. While we geographically are across King County, definitely a majority of our funded partners are located in South King County and representing communities of color.
We definitely try to support organizations that are for, by, and about themselves. So Kai, did you get a chance to hear the question? I want to make sure, if not, I'd love for George to repeat it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know if my headset's working, but yes, I did hear the question, George. And I think that Christina and Whitney were able to answer it. I think our funding our funded partners looks very different than some of the traditional King County groups, because we really are focusing on racial equity and funding those that are most impacted by the inequities that we see, so that they're able to design the solutions. So our work is really representative of the communities and the work that they're doing. So you'll see, if you look on our website, who some of our partners are, and we can put that link in the chat. But I think you'll be surprised by who our partners are and how that compares to some of the other King County groups.
Connected to the BSK initiative overall, so for BSK, we've really tried to outreach to community organizations that haven't historically received King County funding. And so that is a lot of smaller organizations of color. So Patricia's asking for us to share some demographics with the team, and I think we'll get back to you. I'm not sure if we've got like some very specific demographics, but we can share with you some of the information that was shared here. Great, and Whitney has just added our website, so you can take a look at our funded partners there as well. Great question. Other questions? Oh, wait, Andrea was asking a question. Is there a preference for individual speakers or panels, or is that up to the design?
Yes, that is absolutely up to the design. It could be that we see, depending on, what the topic is or who the speaker is, it might be one individual, it might be a panel. So it's really up to the design. I was talking to a partner today about some of our other capacity building activities, and they said, we're designing a workshop with them, and they said, I think I would be more open to a panel at this point, because feeling like we would need to hold the entire hour by ourselves feels like a lot, with all the other stress that we have going on and all the other things that we're managing. So I think it's one about the design, and also about what our partners' preference is, or whoever we're inviting in to do the speaking.
Thanks. Lisa is asking, is the intention for all panels to be open to the public, or are there opportunities to have spaces just for grantees or just for funders?
Yeah, I think both. The question is also about the design, similar to the other one. It might make sense where, when we say 6 to 9 engagements, it could be that there's a subset. There's 3 that are just for funders. And then the remaining ones are open to the public. So that's really about the design.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Lisa? Great. Any other questions? I think we have a few minutes left. We're supposed to end at 4:30, correct?
Correct, yes, and I think now would also be an opportunity that if there's anybody on the call that wants to introduce themselves or wants to speak to the group, we have a few minutes left if there's any introductions or networking that you all are interested in.
So let's just confirm, is there another question for the official part of the session? And if not, then we can stop recording and conclude, and then if there's any networking that people want to do, we can go ahead and do that.
I'm curious, this is Victoria again. I'm curious if there are any themes or topics that the COO partners have brought up as topics that they would like to see as part of the speaker series.
I think there's just some themes around learnings. I don't necessarily think that we've asked the partners around what they would want to hear, but I think there has been some themes around what they would want to share, particularly around, I think, some of their wins and successes around community-driven policy change, community-driven development. I think there's also a lot of work around what partnership means and how to support partnership, coalition building. So I think there are some themes that are emerging. and some of the themes that are shifting around what does it look like to fund, say, racial equity work. They might, I think have a lot of feedback as well that they would want to share with other audiences that they haven't necessarily been given the platform to.
Great. Any other questions? No, none? I know, it's just hard to kind of like read faces. Sounds like Roxana, are you about to say something? No, okay. But
well, and thank you all for joining us today. Thanks for witnessing and bearing with us as we're working from home and kids. I look forward to having some of you apply. If you have other questions, please email Linda or Victoria, and yeah, stay engaged with COO. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, there's one more question.
Okay.
Are we able to identify the funders in advance?
Like for the audience?
Yeah, could you explain maybe your question a little bit, Kristen?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think we would look at, and that could be the question that we would be looking at in the design. Who are some of the funders that are connected to COO that are doing similar work? So yeah, I think that would be part of the design work with that stakeholder team, because I think some of our governance group members or other stakeholders have some ideas about who those funders are. And there have been some that have been working with us on other events. So we have some relationships already.
Great. Any other last minute questions? Okay, I think this officially concludes our session then.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Kai, do you want to do your final last words to officially close us out?
Nope, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Again, we'll have those questions and everything up on our website. And if you have questions about our partners, you'll be able to find the names of the organizations and the partnerships there.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.